Hello friends, today we are planning to build Hacker News top stories. Along with me, Kenny is there. Hi Kenny.
Hi, Praful.
So are you familiar with Hacker News, Kenny?
Yes, it is something that I frequently visit in the sense that most of the developers and kind of entrepreneurs and all they come to this website, and it provides you kind of like a I would say like a latest trending articles kind of a thing, which is relevant in terms of technology at least, and sometimes in the global space. What about you, Praful?
Yeah, that's right. It is a kind of hidden gem. I'm a very avid reader of this since like last 10 years or more than that. So we'll try to integrate with the Hacker News directly and with the Hacker News API integration. So the part of agenda is to so that how we can make the API integration smoothly. And there is a load more button. So we'll try to load some more article as well. So as part of today's tutorial or the video demonstration, we'll show you that process like last time we have shown in To-Do application, from wireframe diagram to how we come up with this very minimalistic design using Figma. Then we proceed, before we proceed to the code, we'll explain about how we can think in terms of architecture or system design point of view, like how different components are interacting with each other. Followed by today we'll build from scratch and we'll navigate you through step-by-step process. Excited, Kenny?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah. So the main idea is we just want to keep very minimal and simplistic design. So the first step is for wireframe diagram. Wireframe, it just sketch out ideas because this is very minimalistic. So we just display a header and bunch of text to start with. So do you want to add anything, Kenny, in this wireframe step?
Yeah, I think this is the earliest stage, where we are thinking, okay, how do we want the application to look? Like many of the fundamental parts of it are, or what should be the focus of it, without thinking too much about colors or designing or anything of that. So I think, especially for us, when we were discussing of course, the most important thing is the article itself, right? So we just wanted to be able to showcase that articles in a very clutter-free manner, and make it very easy to scroll through and see the title and also click on it, and also give the option of first seeing maybe top 10 and then loading more. So I think that part was very essential to guide us into actually making the final design.
Yeah, true. Then after this wireframe diagram, we proceed to the design phase. So this is the iteration one of our design. So we come up with the minimalistic design here. If you see, the deciding factor is that typography or the font of HN top story is visible. Quite we pay a little bit emphasis on that. And can you come up with this orange navigation bar or orange bar? Can you talk about this orange? Why you thought it is helpful, Kenny?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have read somewhere, or I have seen an example in our that refactoring UI or something like that, that just having a plain white page is like a little boring. But if you put some small section that is having that accent color, like similar to our Google material design and all that stuff, so that a little bit of accent color will drastically change, that how people are perceiving it. So that was the idea that I was going for, that we don't need to put too many orange in this, because Hacker News definitely has that orange as the main focus, but we don't want to throw it everywhere and make it like a mess in terms of focus, but just give a small section that is just indicating that it's Hacker News.
Yeah, right, Kenny. So here we have did, if you see the background of this enter content is a subtle white or white, and it is subtle gray color, the header background. So which will give a little bit of contrast in a design process. And in this iteration, even though it looks minimalistic and okay to us, but the articles are very, there is no bit spacing around those different articles. So we thought little bit spacing will improve the design process. So we come up with the iteration 2. Here, if you can see, there is a little bit breathing room between these articles, and that URL we move from down and all this thing. And during this iteration, we pay very much importance to the spacing across the module. This is a good learning for us as well. So if you see that, it is recommended to design with a constraint in the mind, because if you don't have a constraint system in place, so because you can keep on experimenting with infinite number of permutation combination, and it would get very messier and you'll get a lot of stress. So do you want to touch upon this spacing and spacing learning, Kenny?
Yeah, I think I'll give that example that we were having. Like I was saying, we need 32 pixel spacing, and then you said 24 is nice, and then I said let's meet in the middle and we'll do 28. But that is how the normal conversation happens, right? Because something that looks good, I mean, it does look good, right? I mean, a little off here and there, but then the problem becomes that everywhere we will be deciding, okay, what to pick. Like, do we need 21 or 22 or 23 or 24? We will be like too much wasting time in all these silly things, when actually we need to have that kind of a constraint that Tailwind already is providing us that spacing levels. So that way, I think it was a very good learning for us to follow that. And I think that it is giving that design a little bit of a neat, overall look compared to, when we were randomly doing it.
Yeah, true, Kenny. So I think this is the minimalist design. Now, before diving into the code, let's discuss about how we are thinking in terms of architecture or building in a, different React component interaction. So as we are building these applications using React, TypeScript, and Tailwind, so this is our default choice of technology for this tutorial. So here we have a various sub-component. So they will play together with each other. So Kenny, do you want to elaborate a little bit on this briefly?
Yeah, sure. So this app TSX is like our default thing that React always gives us. It will be there in every startup project, including our boilerplate. So the app TSX, inside that, we start with the actual content for the entire page, which we have called a hacker hn homepage.tsx as a React component. So that we are considering as our entire page. And within that, like as we saw in the design, that top portion having that title of Hacker News and that top orange navigation, orange bar, both of those were the hn header TSX file. And then we separated the remaining, like the article links and the load more button, into the Hacker News body, hnbody.tsx file.
Yeah, sounds good, Kenny. So now little bit discuss about the data model and that technically low level design, we can say this one. So the first one, the previous one is little bit about the component interaction diagram. And this is what we are building about API integration. So this is like our HN body. So here we have a provision, it will interact with that utils API.ts. In this particular file, we are writing all our code to interact with that HN API. So this HN API in the Google, if you type with HN API and do some research, so here we got a GitHub repository. So it is documented properly and which field it will return and what are the APIs we need to call. So we spend some time into understanding that which are the API we can use for fetching these top stories and getting that story level detail. If you see that here, yeah. See here the new top best stories we can retrieve using this top story.json. It will return a bunch of ID. So this is the first sock we receive. Then we have to call another API to get that detail about the post. So once you call this, passing this item ID, then you will get this text, title, IDs, user, and some other information. But we will be explaining more about in while doing this actual coding. But the idea is that when we load this particular page, we call this load stories, which will call this page stop stories and store it returning a bunch of 400 IDs. it is not returning like 10 or 20. That API return 400 IDs. So we store in a variable top storage IDs and just retain it. Then for the initially loading page, if you see that in our page we have like 10 stories loaded. And interestingly, Kenny suggested to start with 0, not 1, just to give you a little bit
Hacker feel.
hacker feels. So in the load stories, we'll call this page stop stories, get that IDs, and again we'll call to this page stories as well by passing this list of IDs, like first 10 IDs. Then we got the stories and we store in the stories array. Okay. And when we call this load more, we already have this 400 loop. We maintain a pointer or a kind of offset variable, and that will point to the next 10 occurrence, and we'll get the next 10 stories, and we'll append to the stories array. That's the very simplicity model. So do you want to add anything, Kenny, over here? Or we can straight go to the coding? Hello, Kenny? Yes.
I think I got stuck in between. Yeah.
Yeah, you're there. So let's start with the
Yeah.
coding aspect, Kenny. If you want to add anything on the architecture.
Yeah, I think that is clear that, first step that we're doing is fetching the top story ID. As we saw earlier, that is like an array with the IDs as the elements. We have 400. And after that, we are making a subsequent API call, which will actually give us each ID's specific data like the title and the URL. So I think, yeah, that is good to go, Profil.
Okay, thanks, Kenny. So let's start. And also very interesting thing, we are excited, both of them. We do the LiveShare, we install the LiveShare extension. So here we have like LiveShare extension, and Kenny can type in his system and I can see this code synthesis in my VS Code. So which is really a nice tool, and we do all the coding by pair programming. So just to start with, like we already created a boilerplate code, and this link for the Git repository I'll give you into the description below, so you can explore the code base by yourself. And to just start the project, we can copy this boilerplate folder and paste it just below, and we can rename it to Hacker News. So this is the boilerplate code initialized. So here we have like the TypeScript dependency, React application, Tailwind configuration, all we have set up as part of one boilerplate code, because we don't want to do again and again. So, and we'll create a different video to show you the step-by-step process for that. But today we'll continue from this initialized setup here. And once we create a folder, so we need to do the cd to that directory. And we have to do npm install. This will take a while to do the installation of the, all the necessary modules. Yeah, it will take a couple of minutes after this npm install is complete. Now we can do this npm start. So this will take a few seconds to, 1 or 2 minutes just to open this page in that browser. So you'll get this message after npm start. So the website is hosted. This is from the boilerplate code. You can see hi from Kenny and Prabhu. And there's a basic template. Here we'll start our coding. See if you can see like Kenny mouse is hovering. So Kenny, can you start with our first component would be HN homepage, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first page will create with the HN homepage. There will embed other components.
I think it is just taking some time to refresh on my side.
So this should be our first component. Like see, the Ken is typing and I'm able to see him typing. So it is really fun. I can make some changes and break his code as well. The first part is to import the React, because the functional component will look exactly same as, any React functional component. And there is no direct way we are importing the React or using this React namespace. But just to recognize this as a React component, we have to import this one. And we are exporting so that we can use across other component like app.tsx. So here, just to start with, we'll create a simple division tag. Like we mentioned, this code content will change in coming time. So here we can save it. Yeah. So in app.ts, we'll import it. So this h1 tag we can get rid of. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
So it is our first component we have created. We have not created any other subcomponents. So for that, we have to store that, import this hn home page. I usually use press command and dot just to do auto import. But can you feel comfortable in typing?
I don't know. Sometimes it is not auto completing. So yeah.
Yeah, no problem. And I will get rid of this app.css. And logo also we don't need it.
Logo also we don't need. Yeah.
So once I break the code, can you fix it? So here we have, see if you can see in the right hand side, it's automatically loaded. I can see this browser console in my, even though it's changing in his laptop, I can see the code changes and the rendering here immediately. I don't need to refresh. Now after this home page, we have the two component, but first we'll start with HN. HN stand for Hacker News. We given the prefix for all our component, HN header. So
Yeah.
then we'll have HN body as well. So can you start with HN header component, can you?
Yeah.
Yeah, he started creating this file. This file popped up in here. So like similar way, we are importing this React component. So here also we'll import it. And this this particular section we are building, not this architecture. This is the final design. Figma is a very nice tool and you can use for freely. We are not paid customer, so we can use freely most of the features available and we can do collaboration as well. So this header section we are building using HN header component will define the text h1 tag and background color and this new orange color. Okay, you'll see a little bit of Tailwind code in a while. Yeah, Kenny, HN header, yeah. Now we'll import this React component again. We're building HN header component. Similarly, here we're exporting and creating the same component, HN header, and we'll start with a simple division tag. With we can create one h1 tag where we can put like HN top stories. And before we do some styling, let me import it, Kenny.
Sure.
HN header, right? Yeah, it appeared. We have to close this tag. So I got autocomplete. Kenny is not fortunate enough.
It is not. It's not coming for me. Maybe the live code thing is not working correctly.
Yeah, see it imported. So we don't need to type it again and again. So this is coming. Yeah. And if you see that, this HN top story is reflected here.
Yeah.
And then the interesting thing is that if you notice here, like HN top story is not looking like H1 tag. This is the most surprise to the people who are coming new to Tailwind. So Kenny, do you want to tell about H1 tag, your experience? Kenny is paused, we believe. Yeah, as I was talking about Kenny, this H1 tag in Tailwind style is not formatted properly.
Yeah.
So for that, right, we have to give like, text 7XL. This would make it larger. Let me save it. So if you see this now, the text became a little bigger. By default, the style is normalized to the default style. So you have to explicitly give the style what you want. Or if you want a universal style for H1 for across your application, you don't need to write text 7XL again and again. In the one configuration in the Tailwind config file, you can do that. Okay.
Yeah.
So now let's give a little bit border top for border, because it is about that HN color in the top, and we'll define a new color here. This is like border HN orange color. So this is not available inside our Tailwind application. This is a custom color. We'll show you how to write custom color for you. Like you have to go to Tailwind configuration. There are so many files. We have to go here. Kenny, do you want to add here, like how to extend it and talk about a little bit more about that?
Yeah, just let me open it. Yeah, so there inside theme extend, we just have to add the colors block.
Yeah.
So here in colors, yeah.
Yeah, one important thing, Kenny, if you don't add in extend, and if you add directly into the theme, right, then all the color of Tailwind will be gone.
Okay, got
So
it.
extending means you are adding one color on top of the Tailwind color. But if you don't use the extend keyboard and just started, yeah, you can type Kenny.
Yeah.
So this is like the key what we are given, HN orange, and the hex code. So it will make all the grayscale for us also available, I think. So will it make all the grayscale also available? I'm not very sure about it. Like darker color of the orange and the lighter color of the orange. Because I'm sure that it will create like all the border, it will create text and background it will create, but I'm not sure of the grayscale, the number.
Not sure.
Yeah, we can try it out. But I think we have to restart the application, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is saying compiling.
Because it is part of the build process, right?
Yeah.
So the bundler has to pick up a new configuration. So even though we have the library load for all the normal TSX files or another CSS or whatever other files, this configuration is just read one time when the server is being started. So since we're changing it, we have to restart.
Yes. So it is now loading up. So let me get rid of this thing. It came why I don't know. So now we are in the header section. So once we are loading this particular thing, it will come this as a border orange. I think once we save it. So once the Tailwind config is changed and we restarted the RAID server. So if you can see this border is appear 4 pixel or 4 rem wide or height, or I don't know what width or height.
4 units profile. That is like similar to we saw that spacing page, right?
It is known as width or height.
So this is border top 4. So 4 is the unit. I mean, it is not a unit specifically, but that spacing chart that we saw earlier, it has that conversion to pixel and rem. I think it is 1 rem. Yeah. 4, I think, is 1 rem.
Let's see that quickly.
Yeah.
Like we are using 4M, 64 pixel.
No. The left number should be 4. Like you will have to scroll up a little bit.
Okay.
The first number 4.
Oh, so 1 rem.
Yeah.
And 16 pixel. So we given 16 pixel height to the border.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's get started. We have applied this border and then we'll apply this little bit background color, gray color as a hint, and padding and padding left and padding 8. So it should look with little bit spacing to it. Yeah, so because I just squeezed it, so it is not very responsive. Otherwise, we could have scaled down this code a little bit. Font should be a little bit reduced if you want to make it responsive. But that's fine. So after HN header, this HN header part is completed. Then we proceed with that API implementation. Then we'll come to the body part. Okay, Kenny?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Do you want me to create that API file?
No, that's fine. I can create it.
Okay.
So under source directory, we'll create a util folder. And here we are using TypeScript. So we'll, instead of giving API.js, we are using API.ts TypeScript. Now we'll build this API.ts file and we'll build this API, Kenny.
Yeah.
So the first we'll define a constant like HN host we can create, and we can give this URL from that website we have shown it, like I can use
from
Firebase.
The API. Yeah.
Then the first API will create like the phase top storage IDs. This will return all the IDs from that from the top storage IDs. The list of IDs.
Yeah, this is the first. Yeah, the first API call that we saw, which will be returning an array which has the ID for each of the top stories.
Yes. So here we are using this by default fetch function call. In most of the project, I see Axios. So you use fetch or Axios, Kenny?
I am more used to fetch because that is what comes by default. I haven't tried Axios. I don't know what the difference is.
Yeah, Axios is similar to fetch, but the interface more or less similar, but it has some kind of additional functionality like retry if one web service is failed, right? So you can retry after 5 minutes, and there is a retry concept. And there are some additional parameter you can, if you want to have some progress bar kind of thing, right? So it will call a callback method after, if, let's say you're uploading a file, and at one particular interval you want to show the progress bar. So those kind of things you can achieve using the Axios. But fetch also very standard. So for the learning you can use fetch. So here we are using string interpolation. This is the URL, this particular agent host URL, and we are calling this top storage.json. And because we are using a await keyword, so we are using async in conjunction with this. Yes, Kenny?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to ask, I think many people will be thinking, okay, why do we have to have a separate variable for the HN host? We can just put it as a simple string inside fetch, right?
Yeah. So usually because there are 2-3 API we are going to develop our methods. So both will use this HN host at one place. So it would make easy to, if this is a host is changed, or easy to externalize, put in a constant into some variable or constant.
Yeah, it's just like considered best practice, right?
Yeah, so that we can use in multiple places. That is the only need. And technically this export is not needed for our project, because this HN host we are not using any other place. But this fetch top storage IDs, we have to export it because we are planning to use this particular function call from HN body component we are going to build. Then one interesting thing is that, so we have to call this, response.json. And that is also written a promise. That is not a data. In other, like if you use Axios, this response will directly have the data inside it. So you can directly access the JSON. But here, if you see that, we have to use the await keyword. This is the most confusing part of using fetch. So did you notice it, Kenny?
Yeah, that is true. I mean, simply giving a fetch will not give you the result, right? You have to do this extra magic or extra.
Yeah, because this doesn't make sense, because this is because the async call, right? The fetch of the network call may take some time. That's why it is making it asynchronous, because we cannot expect it may take 1 second or 1 hour or 10 hours, right? This I'm just extrapolating the information.
Yeah.
But this is once we get the data here, so the JSON should be pretty simple. It can be synchronous, and I don't have that clue that why they make it promise return and have to use this await keyword. But we have to keep remembering that response, then we have to call .json to get the JSON data, and we have to put await. And we can log this information, and we'll return this top storage IDs. And one interesting thing I follow, like because I written like TypeScript code here, so using this Node compiler, we can't execute it directly.
Yeah.
So we have to use, TypeScript compiler to convert it to JavaScript, then execute it. It is exactly JavaScript code only, but we'll add some types in a few seconds. But till now, we have not used any TypeScript feature, Kenny.
Yeah.
Okay. And one interesting framework I'm playing around these days, but we have no need to worry if you're not comfortable. You can execute anyway, whatever is comfortable by running this TypeScript code. But I feel comfortable into running Deno. Did you heard about the Deno, Kenny?
Yeah, Praful, I heard it's by the same person who created Node, and it's like a play on the word node, like Node.
Yeah.
I think it is like adding some kind of functionality, and like you're saying, by default, it is able to execute the TypeScript file without needing to do the intermediate compilation step.
Yeah, so we can directly execute the TypeScript code. And it is very much secure into mind. But if you want to give, this is a Deno command, you can install it by npm install Deno or something like that. Or you can go to their Deno website to see this installation process. So Deno run, allow net, this is the important thing inside Deno. So you are explicitly giving a permission to, this TypeScript code to execute the any web service call. Otherwise, it's not treated as a very insecure way, because if you run any script, download it, it can have access to your system, then it can do malicious activities. But anyway, that is out of the scope of this project.
I think the folder that you have to move into API folder.
Yeah.
Util folder.
That's right, Kenny. Yeah, see the bunch of IDs, we got it. That means first our API call is successful. Now we can do anything we like. Now, once we get this list of IDs, now build a service like how to call by passing one ID and get this some title, URL, this kind of information. Okay, Kenny?
Yeah.
And before that, because this is this particular function, async function, is returning a promise. So let's make some type annotation. So which will make it is more explicit. like, because by looking this code, we can know that this is not returning a normal number array, but it is returning a promise.
Yeah.
Now we'll build another function known as, fetch story. So that will also have async function because it will call a web service and it will wait for some time. But interesting thing is that it will take ID as a is type of number that is an argument. So once we pass to story ID, then that it will use as a URL to call this story. Now exactly like above, like we call like response and fetch the same as an host, then we can use item and id.json. So this is, I don't remember by myself. This is we get from this Hacker News API documentation, whatever I shown you earlier.
Yeah.
So now we again do response.json await to get the story data. And now let's print it. And after that, we can have to call this, fetch story. But let us fetch some IDs from here. Because it needs a number. Okay.
Array, it needs array.
Is it? But it is a number, Kenny.
Oh, okay. The fetch story needs only number. Okay, got it. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me clear the screen. The same API I'll call. I commented this ID list. So it is written a bunch of IDs, but it is kids. It is item children, but we are not concerned about that. So we are concerned about mostly this by, who is the author. And this ID is very important. Can you explain later where we use it? And title and URL. So these are the few information we'll extract from this particular API and use it across. So this is where we get the story information.
Yeah.
Now there is one more API we're going on, one more function call we'll call, not API integration, fetch stories, because we want to encapsulate the related functionality in this API.ts. So it would be make other React component life easier to just call and pass some IDs so that functionality can be achieved here. I think this, I press it wrongly. So here we define like constant story. Here we'll type like, we'll get the story ID.id. We'll define an ID field and we define a by. Simply we are assigning those fields. Because other field we can ignore, title and URL. And at this moment,
extracting the data that we want, right?
Yeah, that's right.
UI.
Yeah. And at this moment, it makes sense to create a type for that story. So do you want to create a type of folder and define a type of story, Kenny?
Yeah, sure. Where do you want to put it?
Yeah, create a folder, types, not under utils, directly under SRC. Not a folder, I think, types.ts.
Yeah, we'll create a file. Yeah. Types.ts.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you able to see?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me open it. Create a model or type known as story.
Story.
Yeah.
Okay. What do we have there?
Like ID. ID is a number.
Okay.
And by, that is a username.
By.
We
String.
could have changed like by to some username. Yeah, it is string. But we decided just to keep it consistent with that API. Then title. Then the last one is URL.
URL also. Yeah. And export also, we need to export.
Yeah, we need to export. So it is always a best practice to keep all your type inside one file at types.ts if you want to use this in multiple places. So you can import from this particular type definition and use across your program. Okay.
Yeah, because it is used both in the API module and in our, once we are returning it in the actual React component, we will be able to reuse the same type, right?
Yeah, that's right. Now let's add the type here. Or before adding the type, we'll return the story. Now we'll import this type. Import story from that types folder what Kenny created just now. And let's try to use it. Here we can give explicitly type. So it would be more type aligned. And
Return also.
Return also we can give promise and story.
Yeah.
But there is one gotcha here. Let me execute the same code because we have not changed anything.
I think this workflow is very interesting that you are thinking about the API side without thinking about the React side of it, right? You are only thinking in terms of creating a raw TypeScript file, which is like a generic thing, not at all associated with React, right?
Yeah, that's right. So this is completely independent. And it allows you to focus on the component side and allow me to focus on the API side. So we can extend that interface clearly different manner. So multiple people can also work on that.
Yeah, and I think it is important because we need to have that separation, like, otherwise it will be like some of the UI is handling the like data fetching code and all that, right?
Yeah, true, Kenny. So if you see the problem with using Deno here, Kenny, it is started complaining with some errors. It is unable to find this type for file you created.
Yeah.
Because in Deno, we have to explicitly give this TS file.
Okay. That's interesting. I think all this time we have never thought about extension at all. Every time we are simply importing the name.
Yeah, and it is not needed. We have to again roll back it, undo it. Yeah. But this is like the challenging part of using too much thing.
I think VS Code is also not very happy saying it is saying some error.
Yeah, but see, it is fine now.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's write that last function. Like here we fetch stories. This will pass IDs, array of number, and this also what we'll do. We'll first we'll try to get these IDs right. We'll map this function and call this for IDs.
So this is doing that high level task, right? What wherever like when we are mentioning about the API, first step it has to fetch the story IDs, and then it has to go for each story ID. It has to call multiple API call, right? That is what we're doing here.
Yeah. So the first API call we'll make here, like it will return the list of IDs, and that will just collect like 10 IDs, and it will pass through this function. Yeah. And we'll map through that IDs, and we'll call this fetch story, and we'll assign to stories and log it. So do you think it will work, Kenny?
I think promises might give us issues, but let's try.
Yeah, this is a very interesting part. Let's let me comment it. Let me get some IDs, or we can use the same ID here. Just for simplicity, I just cleared this log. So I'll just create this ID 2 times.
Yeah.
It is not a good practice. You use 2 different IDs. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm using the same ID. It will work with 2 ID as well. Okay. Now let me comment this thing. And also fetch story, let me comment this code because this will print it unnecessarily.
Yeah.
Let's clear this log and yeah, see, this is what we are talking about. This particular step, right? ID's map. It is returning to promise.
Yeah.
So promise hell or promise confusion or promise.
Yeah, I think first time this happens, everyone is totally confused. Okay, what is happening? But then it takes some time, and then you spend like 1 week learning about promise, and then finally you get it.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm hitting a enter button here. So now let's fix it. See, here we have to use like again a promise.all. We have to wrap this IDs.map. So do you want to talk about this promise.all, Kenny?
Yeah, sure. So what is happening here when we are calling that IDs.map, like we saw earlier in the console, we are getting an array of promises. So what we need to now do is like we need to make sure all of that promise is resolved, and only after that then we can get the actual data. So this promise.all is essentially a function which the promise library gives us to accomplish the same thing. So when you're giving an array of promises to promise.all, that is telling us that okay, once all the promises are resolved, then that promise.all will be resolved. So it is like one promise to rule all the other promises, kind of a thing. Does that make sense, Prabhu?
Yeah, makes sense. So it will execute all at sequentially 1 by 1 promise because this ID.map will return an array of promises. So this all will execute all sequentially or parallel also can be executed.
So I think it is parallel because all these are independent fetch requests. So promise.all will wait for the slowest one. And once that is done, all those will be already resolved, right?
Yes. Yeah, so we probably create some dedicated video to deep dive into this promise.all and other thing. But now let's proceed. Now, before executing, right, we'll annotate because this is again written a promise. So better to annotate here using what we are trying to return it.
Like it makes it much more clearer.
Yeah. So promise story array. Now let us execute our code.
I think a file is not saved.
Okay. Yeah, that's why it is returning pending.
Yeah.
Yes, we got 2 story. Yeah. This is our own data model.
Finally, yeah. So essentially, whatever count that we give for this fetch story, it will give us all those items, right? All those story data.
Yeah. This is just for testing purpose. We'll just comment out or delete it. Now I think we can keep this log file or remove it. Is up to your ways. So here we build 3 functions. One is fetch top stories, fetch stories, and fetch stories, multiple one. So now do you want to create this file for body, Kenny? Let's start with the body.
Yeah, Profile, just do you want to remove that .ts that we added for the, I'll create the body by that time.
Yeah, that's right.
So just to recap, like earlier we saw that HN homepage. And we saw the header part. Now we are looking into the body part, right?
Yeah, the list of that article.
Yeah. Okay, I have started. I have opened that file. You're able to see.
Yes, yes. We'll start coding here.
Okay.
Now let me start with the HN body. As usual, we'll import using this React thingy.
All the time, every file.
All the time. Then we create like function, you know. So here important part like stories, like we are using this use state. Like here we have to import story, and also this. Let me autocomplete this. I think it is. Yeah, this use state came right, and story we need to import it. So this is where we keep all our stories. So if your API is not ready, right, we can dummy some data here, put some structured test data, and you can play around with it so that you can proceed with your UI component independently. So the next step would be to import the story type from the types what Kenny created earlier.
Same thing that we used in the API file, right?
Yeah, it needs to be same, like same thing we are using. Now we'll create like, we'll loop through these stories using this map. We created a division tag over here, and we'll loop through all the stories. This is just a placeholder we created, and slowly we'll integrate with the API just to get some data. So it is like IT stand for Kotlin convention.
Each item we're just denoting as IT.
Yeah.
Or you can think of it like item. Yeah.
So here we just create a placeholder. This would be, we'll improve it like ID or title. And next object will create like top stories. Top use state will create just to, this is a React hooks. I think you guys are familiar with that concept. So this is just to set some variable and create a function to update that data point. And it is of type number array. Then let's call a function to load the stories, and we have to call this API. So here we can call a story load stories, and in this case we are, you know, calling this fetch stop stories. We are not need to pass any arguments.
Yeah.
So we can import it. So let us import two functions like fetch stories and fetch stop stories. We need these two functions within our case. And once we get data right for top storage ID's data, we have to set it to this variable. And we'll get 10 items from this top storage data, and we'll store 10 stories into the storage block or the data.
Yeah, so that first API call will give us 400 items, right? And then we are going to take only first 10 from it.
Yes, yes. This slice we can use. 0 is the start index and 10 is the ending index.
Always confusing that one.
Yes,
slice.
Yeah. So basically this will be 0 to index to the up to the 10th index, it will fetch the data.
Yeah.
Then set stories. We have to set the storage data. Okay.
So when are we calling this?
Yeah, in the use effect function, we this use effect is an interesting function and most confusing, I feel like.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, this to execute some code in the loading time, or this is some side effect code. This is completely independent block. If something happen, so this code block will be executed based upon that dependency array. So here, if you see this, we are given the dependency array as empty. That means whenever this page is rendered, so this first time it will be executed. So I think we have to import it again.
Yeah.
Okay, it is still complaining. I think by this time I am expecting to see some, or we have not added it.
We have to add it. I'll just add it.
Yeah.
So into the home page component, I will add the body component, right?
Yes.
So I'll try control space, but it's not coming for me.
Do you want me to include it? Let me do that.
Yeah, just include it. Yeah.
Yeah, I did it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
So we included in the home page just to render it.
Yeah.
Oh, it complained.
Okay.
It is talking about the
There's a
missing
map. Map we have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here also it is complaining about some error is there. It may be ESLint. Usually it should not fail it, but we never know.
I think we can give a ID as the key, right?
Yeah.
IT.id. That should autocomplete, right?
Yeah. So this is the benefit of adding the type. If you write JavaScript, right, there is no way to get this autocompletion. So
this is automatically taking from that story that we created, right? Story type.
Yeah, from the types we have created. So a key you can give ID, so which would be unique. So then this would be resolve this issue.
Yeah.
Okay. But where is ID? Yeah, now it came. So our API integration is completed.
Yes.
So now it is done thing. Now let's build a little bit news item component to make it formatted properly and add some comment and link and all this, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So now we'll build this news item module. This will just to do some kind of styling information.
And I think it is very good practice to separate the components, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Having its own specific functionality.
Yeah.
So that way, any changes that we make, we know exactly which file to go to.
Yeah. So here we define that as usual, we import a React component and define news item component here. And we're exporting it, but this news item will take some arguments. So it is better practice to define a type. So which are the input attributes for this component? So we define a type here, news item props.
So what this will do is it will give us that autocomplete, or it will complain. TypeScript will complain if we are not giving it all these correctly.
Yeah, so we can mention required optional, but for our case, these 3 attributes are required, or 4 attribute. So here we define arguments, and as news property is a type. Now we define a division tag here. This is for the article section. This is where our main link or article will come into the picture.
So mostly if we look at it at this point, it is more about styling and thinking about how the data should be coming, because we already have the data ready in the previous section.
Yeah. So here we have to give a href like URL, and the content would be index the number dot title. And we want to open in a new page. That's why we given the underscore blank. And can you talk about this rel, Kenny, why we need it?
Actually, I have no idea how that came, but do you have any idea?
I don't able to recollect. No referrer. Yeah. Maybe we
Okay.
can spend some time later.
Yeah.
So we can do some styling, like text TXL, just to make it a little bit bolder.
Yeah,
Now
based on our UI, right? That Figma design that we made, we had to make it a little larger.
yeah. Now in this section, we'll define like a host name, because it's from URL to get this host name. Instead of doing
Yeah, we just
like,
want to show.
yeah,
We just want to show like
instead,
www.google.com or something like that, without showing the full link.
yeah. So instead of writing some string manipulation and doing the code ourselves, we put into default new URL, pass the URL, and get the host name directly. Now here we have link for the comment section.
Yeah.
Same way we'll give the href. So from where we can get this link, Kenny?
Yeah, so I was also thinking the same thing, like when we were doing like, that Hacker News already is having the comment section, right? So that website, we can just check that address bar. So that is how we are getting this particular ID, just giving that ID.
Yeah. So this will open to the Hacker News comment section. And similarly, we can open a new page. And we'll do a little bit of styling for this two section. So we'll apply some margin and text style and gray out color for that comment section. And here for the main title section, we'll give some margin 12, and by default style we are using it. So can you use this component into your this HN body section?
Yeah, yeah. Let me just import. HN body, right? Body. Yeah, you will have to do the import part, but shall I type or are you removing?
Yeah, you can go and type it.
Okay, so here we want news item, right? News item. Can you just import it?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then same thing. Key we have to do. Autocomplete is still not working for me. So what else we need?
ID.
Title. ID. Okay,
it is not prompting you.
No, I'm not getting autocomplete. Something with that
because of
live
live
share.
share.
Yeah. Title and URL also, right?
Yeah.
URL. Anything else? That index also we have to do.
Yes.
Index was the name correctly?
Yeah, it is complaining about the index. Index only.
Okay, correct.
So URL other thing. So once I reload, it should work. Yeah, see here we build the page.
Yeah.
Why the margin is not coming here?
Body, I think, yeah, the body we might need to add some. Wait, let me check. Yeah, in the body we just missing some class. Which was the margin? Do you remember?
Margin 48.
Margin left 48. It was same in the header, right?
Yeah.
Header was yes 48. It has to be padding left, not margin. Okay. No.
Yes, perfect. And there is a little bit spacing in the top.
Top also is missing. I think it.
You can keep
That
48.
was 24.
Yeah, that's fine.
24. Yeah, just paste it in. Okay.
Yeah, not reflecting. Do I need to save it?
No.
Yeah, it reflected. Yeah, it looks good.
Mm-hmm.
So here we able to replicate this top stories. And today we are not able to complete this load more. That is another API call. Basically, we can define a button here and we can expose another function. Inside function, we have to use the same top story ID data and splice it into from 10 to 20. Then we'll get this stories and we'll append to it. Then we'll get this data. So you can refer the example in our GitHub page, how we have implemented top stories. For today, I think we have good to go.
Yeah, it's been a long video, I guess.
Yeah. Thanks, guys, for watching. Have a good day ahead. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.